Okay, so hello and welcome to my 2014 Michigan Class Championships videos on chess. This is the first of what will be 5 videos from the 5 games played in this year's Class Championships. My first round opponent was Isaac Zylstra, and I had the black pieces. He began with 1 d4. I played knight to f6, controlling the e4 square. c4, e6, knight to c3, and then I played d5 to hold e4 again against the knight. And then he played bishop to g5, and I played knight b d7. So all pretty standard opening moves so far. Queen's Gambit, I didn't accept the Gambit. And now my opponent plays c takes d5, and I recapture. Should be mentioned that when your opponent plays this way against you, when you have the black pieces, your bishop becomes active, and in many openings, the pawn being on e6 restricts the activity of this bishop. So you should actually look forward to your opponent making that type of exchange within, let's say, like a French defense or a Slav, like this was probably going to be with c6 coming up later. So it's an idea then to get your bishop freed up if you're able to have them do that for you. So I felt pretty good about the position, and pretty early on didn't really see any tactics or anything to worry too much about. So I decided to go ahead and look around the tournament hall at the different games that were going on. And to my surprise, when I returned back to my my chair, I noticed that the knight was now on d5. So if you haven't seen this before, or even if you have, I'd encourage you maybe to stop the video and go ahead and think about what black can do in this position, and how I was able to get a pretty significant advantage based on this move. So I'm going to pause the video right now, and I'll walk you through what happened in a minute. So okay, so first a player might think something like maybe c6 was played, with the idea that if the knight took my knight, there'd be like a queen to a5 check. I think a lot of us have seen this queen to a5 check and then maybe taking the bishop, but in this particular position that doesn't even really work because the bishop could come back and interpose. And also the knight capturing on f6 captures with check. So that's not really what we're looking at here. Instead, it was just the simple knight takes knight. So I'm not sure if my opponent was surprised by this move, or maybe even after it was played kind of remembered that this is a bit of a trap here. So already white essentially has lost a piece, because as you'll see, when his bishop takes my queen, I'm able to play bishop to b4 check, and the only piece that can interrupt that check is the queen, so queen to d2. I play bishop takes queen, and then king recaptures, and then I capture. And if you look at the pieces on the board now, it seems I've come out a knight ahead. I've got the extra knight there on e4. So I have 2 developed knights, my opponent has a developed pawn. We both have kings that can't castle, but again, I've got a piece for a pawn essentially, so that's a significant advantage, and we'll see in this game how my opponent tries to make it exciting now or make it interesting, but when you're down that much material, it can be challenging to come back in a game, especially when your pieces aren't significantly developed. Usually when we sacrifice material in a chess game, we're doing it to maybe damage the king's castle position, like remove pawns around it, and then maybe our queen or some other pieces are able to come in and checkmate the king. Or maybe we're sacrificing material for connected passers, which can be very strong, the pawns being able to march down the board and queen. But in this particular position, I'm not really seeing a lot of compensation for white, so my opponent plays e4, and does have 2 pawns in the center. My knight attacks one of them, and he pushes that one forward. And now my knight's on d5, a wonderful outpost for this knight. You'll notice that no pawns can ever challenge the knight from that post. But again, I probably could leave the rest of the game without too much commentary, so we'll just go ahead and play through some more moves here. Knight to f3. My opponent, of course, has the idea of coming into g5, attacking f7 where it would fork my king and rook, so that would have been annoying. But I played h6, my opponent plays g4, and then I play knight to b6. Pretty natural developing moves here. Just knight protects the knight, allows the bishop into the game, attacking the pawn on g4. So that was a pretty simple decision to play the knight there. My opponent decides to play g5, and my bishop threatens his knight. So if he simply retreats the knight, I'll be up a pawn as well as I'll be up a full piece, I guess, right? Because right now I'm down a pawn but up a piece. So if I got that pawn, it'd be just up a full piece. Well, my opponent decided to go for those connected passers. He plays pawn takes h6, and if I would have played bishop takes knight, my opponent can play rook over. Oh, sorry, he can play pawn captures first on g7, so my rook has to defend the pawn promotion, and then play rook to g1. And I considered going into this for a moment just to have the two pieces, and that I wasn't too worried about the pawns queening, but at the same time that h-pawn could become dangerous. If it's able to just kind of march down the board, the pawns might promote. So when my opponent offered up the piece or the pawn, I went ahead and just recaptured the pawn to keep things pretty simple and safe. My opponent played the knight over to h4, and I played king to e7 to connect my rooks and not put my king on a square that the bishop could check it on. So my opponent played bishop to d3, played rook over to d8, attacking a backward pawn on d4. So pawns attacked. My opponent threatened my bishop, and here I played rook h to g8. And my opponent fairly quickly played bishop to h7, which has a bit of a sting to it. If I would have played rook to g7, my Isaac then could play knight to f5 check, threatening both to win the exchange. And if my bishop were to capture, then just his rook would take my rook. So I wanted to avoid this, right? Because I could move, for example, if I move my king back, knight takes, king takes, rook takes, king takes. I'm still up substantial material in this particular position. So I guess I could have played into it, but to keep things simple and safe, I simply played rook to g5, where my pawn supports my rook. And again, I'm avoiding complications. So my opponent plays rook over to e1. I play the bishop back to e6. And because of the fact that I'm up the piece for the pawn, my opponent doesn't want to exchange rooks. And typically when you're up material, if pieces begin to come off the board, that material begins to be felt more with less pieces on the board. So at this point, though, if you look at the position, both my rooks are actively placed on files that are either all the way open, like that G file that's all the way open right now, and then the D file is half open with this king on it and a pawn that I can harass. So my pieces are very well placed, and I decided to go ahead and begin attacking. So I played knight to c4 check, and my opponent played king to c2 to retain that b pawn. Doesn't want to allow my knight to capture it. And then I played knight to b4 check, and my opponent here played king back to b1, again trying to hold on to pawns. But unfortunately, this allowed knight c into d2 with check, winning the rook. And having already been down material and now going down additional material, my opponent went ahead and resigned this game. So round one was a little bit different than I might have expected for a first round game of Class A. I got a little bit fortunate here that my opponent walked into an opening trap. I should go back and mention just real quickly though, after bishop g5, knight bd7, it not only sets up a trap, but it does have other ideas of strengthening my center. And in general, I would encourage you to go ahead and play for traps in positions, but also make sure you're not making a move purely hoping for a trap, but also that it's in support of a strong, good opening move, not just a move that allows a trap. So I wish you luck in your games, and I look forward to sharing my next game with you soon. Thank you.